We're really excited to talk to you today about wood fiber insulation in multifamily applications because I think there's a lot of assumptions that wood fiber, which is new to the United States in terms of manufacturing, is for some reason more of a residential single family home. And really, the essence of today's call is to have the expertise of Todd and Jesse, and I'll introduce them in a second, to weigh in the sense that no, if you're building a single frame home out of wood, we do a lot here in the States with wood frame structure in multifamily and light commercial. So there's no reason at all to not consider utilizing wood fiber in these structures. So we really just want to have a conversation about that, the thought process that goes into considering new materials, how that's vetted out, how that's managed on the job site, how it's tested after the fact to make sure that it's living up to the reputation in terms of whether it's R value or installation, etc. So that's really the essence of what we'll be talking about today. For many of you, you have attended these Beyond Our Value sessions in the past, so you're fully aware of who we are, but there probably are a number of people that are not familiar with TimberHP. So I'll have some very basic slides that we'll go over, but the time I want to spend is with regards to multifamily. So with us today is Jesse Thompson, who's principal owner, co-founder of Kaplan Thompson Architects. Great resource. They do single family, they do multifamily throughout New England, and I'll let Jesse talk more about his business in a bit. He has some slides teed up. And Todd Rothstein from Avesta Housing, all things construction. I mean, these are folks, and again, he has slides teed up to tell you more about them, but I've worked with both Jesse and Todd, and they're so passionate about the industry and about the end product, but be it a home, be it multifamily. And hopefully some of you have had the pleasure of seeing them both present. If it's up here in Maine, you've probably seen Todd present at a number of different venues. And Jesse is, I guess all over the United States at this point as you present. So we have two really great experts that'll assist us with our conversation today. My background, I've been with TimberHP now for a couple of years, but I've been in the building material industry pretty much my whole career with Anderson Windows and Doors, as well as Huber, a natural pivot for me to come over with TimberHP as a wood-based product in the wood frame category. Full confession, I also was in the propane and oil business with Dead River Company, a small mom and pop company up here in the Maine and New England market. So really, that experience has helped me quite a bit as well. So TimberHP, we are the first North American company producing wood fiber insulation, certainly taking this concept and technology from Europe. And by producing it here in the United States, it obviously makes it extremely affordable now to be considering this as a Main Street product option from some of the other conventional insulation out there. One of the cool properties is it is carbon storing. We're taking that carbon, sequestering it in the final product. High performance, it's very vapor open and very durable when we come out with board on site, exterior wood fiber, 6-month exposure rating, etc. So the other thing is Class A for our interior products. So ASTM E84 Flame Spread A. So that's fantastic. Both those products are on market, good to go. The board, when it comes out in November, will be Flame Spread B, but we'll evolve that into A over time as well. But we have the timber fill product out there in the market, and that's an alternative to the cellulose product. We're making a lot of iterations on that product to make it easier to install. We've been on market for that about 1.5 years, and that's available now through retailers as well as installation companies. We've got some great partnerships that are out there. TimberBat is also in the market now. We're a little over 1 year into the market with the TimberBat. Again, both obviously the Timber Fill and the TimberBat are interior products. Both of these products, what's really unique about them is they're not just thermal, but they also have some fantastic STC ratings on that as well. All the conventional sizes are out there. We really are looking at the mineral wool as a competitor out there in the market from a price point perspective, as well as similarities in terms of installation. You'll actually find that it's actually a little less expensive than the mineral wool out there. And then in November, we'll be coming out with the timber board. We know many people have been waiting for that. We will have CapEx coming in next month. Chimbro, our contractor, is back on site, and that board line is about 95% complete. And it's really just the electrification as well as then getting our operators on the machine to bring it to life. And then we'll be doing third-party testing in the summer months and looking to launch this in November, but we'll probably also have some pre-certified material earlier than that as well. Um, Before I drop the mic and hand it over to Todd in a second, I think what's interesting, and not all customers care about this, but many do, is the carbon storing aspect of it. So finally, here we have an alternative in the United States to some of the other conventional insulations out there. And, we're not mining mineral, we're not using cullet, we're using wood. And so what we're able to do is utilize that wood fiber, put it into insulation, and provide that as a product for thermal and sound for the two products I just mentioned, Timber Fill and Timber Bat. And then the board will be utilizing that for the thermal aspects of it. So it's unique. We have a lot of people that are very fascinated by that. And we're looking at institutional customers, builders that want to move in that mantra. Not everybody does. So I think the key thing beyond the carbon story is the fact that we do have a robust R value, awesome STC ratings, and it's affordable. So if carbon storing and that it doesn't excite you, there's a lot of other things that should excite you about it. Plus, your installers will love it because you're literally just brushing it off at the end of the day and having dinner, and you're not having that itchy, scratchy feeling. We will have all the testing, and we do. We have 1 hour, 2 hour fire rated wall assembly, so we are code compliant. And the STC ratings are right on par with the mineral wool folks out there as well. And we do have all that testing data for you. So very high level. Like I said, I really wanted to kick it off and turn it over to Todd and Jesse for a conversation. I'll be the moderator. So if we get hung up on a subject point, I'll be looking at a clock to move the conversation along. So Todd, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thanks. Thanks a lot, Scott. My part at the beginning here is fairly brief, and Scott, you'll or whoever's running the slides can go pretty quickly. So Avesta Housing, at a
Not
glance,
that quickly.
not that quickly, but you can go to the next slide. At a glance, Avesta has over 100 properties, 3,100, 3,200 units, and on our docket, we have 500 to 1,000 units in the queue for the next 3 years, where we're continuously trying to develop more properties. That's our that's our stance. Uh, and we basically, if you took an arc, most of our properties are within a 50-mile radius of Portland, but we tap into New Hampshire as well. And we basically serve the low to medium income of residents that have a median income of $20,000 a year or less. So it's affordable housing. And so what does that mean? Uh, our goal when we build buildings are to make sure that they perform their best. We focus on the structure, the shell. And so we know that if we build a building, people will come. And so we may not focus on stainless steel or granite countertops to lure people to come into our apartments. So we make sure that these buildings are to last because they have to survive the 100 years as we're committed to making sure that they are performing and making sure that our operational costs are sound, that we can have money so we can deal with deferred maintenance. That's a goal. Continue. We have several lines of business. We are a 50-year-old company. We do developments, affordable housing. We also maintain those. We have resident services. So we're dealing with a lot of people, nearly 4,000 people. Home ownership, where we help some people that have actually home ownership crisis centers. Assisted living, we have two facilities, one in Portland, one in Gorham, Maine. And we obviously do a lot with, well, not obviously, but we do advocacy and community outreach on a regular basis. So Avesta has almost 300 employees, and we do as much to advocate, construct, and reach out for affordable housing for people in Maine and New Hampshire as much as we can. Next. What sets us apart? We are a private nonprofit, and so sure, we work for the communities that we serve in. We do qualify where we can for low-income housing tax credits, but we use private funding to build our buildings. We provide supportive services for residents, financial counseling, so on and so forth. We do provide senior housing, people with disabilities, and advocate for legislation, funding, and policies on a regular basis. So we work in this industry of multifamily housing. Some of our older properties were low rise, excuse me, they were actually what I call single homes, single level apartments. Now they're double loaded corridors, two, three, four, 5 stories high, mostly. I think that's the rest of this first round of slides, but I just want to, yeah, so just go back and I just want to just chat about basically how I started, which was 12 years ago after I worked for 6 years for a general contractor in construction. So I had experience building and renovating buildings where I get a set of plans and I do what I was told. But starting at Avesta, I started as an asset management and actually understanding what resident needs were. And health, safety, building energy efficiency were critical to what I was uh, headed to do. And I became an efficiency main partner, a FI certified consultant, which I had no business actually trying to do that, but I needed to be educated, and then became FIA certified builder, main indoor air quality member, just so that I was an educated consumer, really, because I wasn't a builder any longer while I was working for Avesta. About 10 years ago, I I participated in a conference. It was a wood uh, conference in Maine at a lumber mill where I saw this young student at UMO presenting what they were working on was a wood fiber board insulation, and I was blown away. That was the first introduction where I thought fiber could be an insulation board. Several years later, at a FIAS conference in Maine, I was introduced to wood fiber being used in Europe, and then heard that there's a possibility that someplace in Maine there'd be a plant. Then years later, people were starting to talk about, the XPS insulations and the blown-in insulations, basically the fluorocarbons that we're using to insulate these buildings to make them efficient, are more dangerous than fossil fuels themselves. And we should be thinking about the life cycle of the manufacturing of these insulations we're using, and it made more sense now to be thinking about what are cleaner installations, what are cleaner ways to be building and actually looking at alternative materials. And then we started hearing about TimberHP as a possibility, or other companies. Glavel started coming, the thought of what this other material started coming about in the last 5, 6 years. Just the thought, then the product started coming about. Now, we heard about timber. I met actually Scott 7 years ago when he was working for another company, pushing out Huber, which was very important. Um, but since he rolled over to or moved over to Timber HP, uh, I wanted to commit Avesta to that product because clean um, insulation was something that we could do. A Maine-based company seemed like a no-brainer for us. Remember, health and safety was something important to our residents. And so we said to Scott, if you can do it, if you can get close to our pricing, if you can make this work with our suppliers, Avesta wants to commit. And so we have one building that we've completed in gray and we're about to insulate a second building in a couple of months. And we're under contract for a third building and soon a fourth and then a fifth. So Avesta is committed to the timber HP on the exterior timber fill. We are interested in the timber bat. Actually, we have one small project and are very interested in the exterior material because we know that it may be an alternative to, well, we know it's an alternative to the Huber XP, the Huber Zip R, because insulation on the outside of the board, my understanding is actually a better alternative than inboard. I have a lot of other things, but I want to turn it over to Jesse right now, if you don't mind, and then we can get to some Q&A.
Thanks, Todd. Um, yeah, we are I think currently 19-person architecture company in Portland, Maine, and two of us started it about almost 20 years ago, and we've just sort of steadily grown. And uh, we maybe next slide is good. Our our motto from the beginning was beautiful, sustainable, attainable. And in the beginning, that was affordable single family homes. It's now we are doing a lot of affordable multifamily with lots of companies, including Avesta. Avesta is very competitive. They don't just hand any work out to anyone. They make everyone compete for their work. So we're lucky to work with them occasionally. But this project was one of our first. Well, it was probably our largest multifamily at the time by far. And it was a passive house in Maine that at the time was built for, I think, $140 a square foot. And it was this example of how do you make projects attainable and hit great sustainability goals and make wonderful places for people to live. Next, we have broadened that with, I think these are all Avesta jobs. Let's see, what's the next slide? This is a 23 unit that Todd and I worked together on, senior housing in Falmouth, Maine. And all on the Maine housing has very, very stringent cost caps, and very competitive on what affordable housing needs to cost. And so all these projects were built under those standards, but hit really like every single time. You can hear it in Todd's voice of always wanting to do better, always trying to do better every job. So next, these jobs that are sort of like almost at a passive house level of energy. They're not quite there. They're probably, but they're within striking range, and you use those techniques and also are trying to be as healthy as they can for their occupants. This is West End Apartments in South Portland, which has a lot of community services in it. And so what are Todd and I focused, and lots of people in this room? Maine has a pretty vicious housing crisis right now. I think the latest state report is we need 84,000 new homes by 2030, a mere 5 years away. And that's the number of homes Maine needs to have enough people to work the jobs, do the projects we need. In the background, you can see a project that is in Lewiston, Maine. It is 13 buildings, and built a wood frame construction, 3 to 4 stories, trying to revitalize a whole neighborhood. We need about 50 of these going right now to hit these needs. And then next slide. And then one other thing we're focused on is in Maine, this huge amount of fossil fuel energy use is inside buildings. It's almost 40% of the energy use in Maine is linked to buildings. Maine's a very rural state, so it's a lot of transportation energy. But what do you drive to? You drive back and forth between your buildings. That's so the cars are linked to the buildings, and that's where I think insulation products are a big piece of what we're all doing here. Everyone in the room is focused on this. So next. And so how your multifamily construction, how are they built? There's a sort of these various scales. In Maine, we are often working with wood frame, 2 to 3 story, maybe 4 story wood frame construction. They're often slab on grade buildings. They probably have a truss roof, maybe a low slope roof with a rubber membrane, but they're simple economical buildings, a big simple box. Next. When you've got a truss roof, you're doing some sort of blown insulation. You're doing R a lot, right? The Maine housing standards have steadily ratcheted up the amount of insulation you need because this is one of the easiest places to add insulation. And I think this for us has been where the TimberHP products have been really effective. Is it's an easy drop in. You can swap out. We were using blown in cellulose. Well, that was all recycled newsprint. No one reads newspapers anymore, so they don't even have cellulose. So shredded cardboard boxes or the TimberHP products have been great here for us. But these kind of blown in products are in a lot of and one of the simplest installs. Where people like Todd and I have been very focused on is how you do good air sealing and how you control that attic lid where that dashed red line is to make sure that the people in the field can run their jobs easily and there isn't this huge air leakage and moisture leakage up into attics that cause these buildings to degrade. So that's, one of the places where we're focused on insulation, but this is, sort of the simple one. In next slide. Here's what in Maine, a lot of our typical exterior assemblies look like. This is what a wall for us has often gotten to, which is a 2x6 structural wall with some sort of insulation in the cavities and then some continuous exterior insulation, maybe 1.5 inches, maybe 2 inches. Various products are, come and go in the marketplace, but certain kinds of products with an integrated exterior weather barrier are very popular right now. But this kind of R32 is very typical for us in our zone 6 climate.
Mm.
Um, and so that gray fill, I think, is where, quite honestly, is where we've maybe struggled more than, you have to be able to afford the exterior insulation. And that's been a change where 20 years ago, people didn't do this. But what you go on the inside of the wall is one of those areas where in multifamily commercial construction, which is the pricing has to be very good. I mean, next slide, let's see. We have these challenges. And so anyone in the industry knows that the cheapest thing to install is fiberglass bats. And quite honestly, we just had to stop using them. We just don't use fiberglass bats on our projects except for acoustic information. And that's because this is what you see when you show up on site and you see a material that is very difficult to get installed properly. Theoretically, in a laboratory, it might have certain R values, but we just never see it. And pretty much everyone in the industry knows that it's a big challenge where you have this material that supposedly works, but actually the installers hate it. It makes their lives itchy and you can't get it installed. So next slide. Well, this is the kind of thing of like things that are shoved around electrical outlets and the EPA has a grade 3 installation which you're mandated to hit, and we just grade 3 is sort of a mythical creature. You just never really see it. And so next slide, and then you have challenges like this. Multifamily buildings, this is an electrical feeder moment where all the electric meters on the outside of the building are in one spot. They're all ganged on the outside of the building and all these wires coming into these cavities. And there's only a couple insulation products that could reasonably be used here. And then you've got things like corridor insulation where the insulation is kind of just falling out. Someone is walking down the line hoping to shove that back in. These are realities of commercial construction. It can be a very rough and tumble place, and you have to have products that work. So next slide. So in Maine, what happens a lot is blown in insulation in the exterior walls. And this is a pretty labor intensive process. There's netting. So some person has to net all the walls. They're using like these upholstery staplers, like automated staplers where they're running the lines and they're trying to get this absolutely drum tight. And then an installer is sticking a hose behind it to get that up to spec so it will never settle, that it will sit in the walls, it'll cling to itself, and you could cut the netting out and it would stand there. And you're walking the floor, touching someone is supposedly touching every one to make sure that the installer didn't go to lunch early and never half fill that cavity. But this is a pretty, I think, one of our mainstays for good quality construction is to net and blow exterior walls. We really try not to use spray foam personally in our practice. And I was taught once, like, never put a building product in a building where someone has to wear a hazmat suit to put it in, like for the installer or the person living there, like just don't use those products. We see a lot of shrinkage with exteriors with spray foam where it like pulls away from the wall and cracks where you might have gotten this theoretically perfect installation. If someone doesn't mix the chemicals right, if it was too cold that day, it's often very cold on installs where they might be like working where the building skin is very cold, like it's 20 degrees. And so maybe it's heated at the truck, but when it hits that 20-degree wall, did it really cure right?
Mm-hmm.
And then it has very nasty blowing agents and skulls and crossbones on all the barrels. So this has been a product we've really tried not to use except for spots where you just can't do it any other where. And that's why these blown-in products in our walls have been kind of our mainstay. And so next slide. And that's, I think, why we are here And we are intrigued and feeling positive about Timber HP because it is this kind of, it's a bat. We really are excited about the bat insulation, be able to move back to this because we sort of had to ban bat insulation in exterior wall situations. It just wasn't performing, wasn't working. But here we've got this monolithic big product that you can cut with a bread knife around electrical outlets. You can visually inspect it and it doesn't require netting. And so this has been, I think, why we have been hopeful and why we were here to talk. And next slide, maybe I think Todd, you got some slides that this,
This is one.
yeah, these, looking at the blown in is a nice because we have a competitive marketplace where you can price it against cellulose, against, I think there's recycled cardboard box material, and timber, the blown in timber fill. And yeah, Todd, you might want to talk about this here.
This was a project in Gray, Maine. This was our first full building where we worked with Scott. Where we got the contractor committed, and so we did a demonstration on. This was the timber fill. So we did the webbing for the. It was perimeter. We didn't have the bat at the time available. So it was a demonstration, then the complete installation, and then we verified. So Scott's team came in and actually did a density verification. And so we were committed, and they were committed to actually making sure that the density installation was sound. And sound, by the way, in multifamily, I want to be clear, smell and sound are huge in our industry for multifamily, and that's something I didn't want to forget. And so that's why we're very excited. With some of the slides you had, Jesse, on demising walls between apartments where you have a lot of wavering with bad insulation, we're waiting. We're looking to actually introduce this in between demising walls as the next step because this product has a much better sound coefficient than what we do with no matter what we're going to do with an R13 bad insulation. It as much as we try to work with installers, it doesn't work. And so this is our first step. The project just finished in December. People started moving in. The next step is demising interior partitions with interior partitions that have a lot of clutter. And that's the challenge. Like the timber bat doesn't work when there's a lot of clutter. Sure, a box here and there we can cut around. But when there's multiple wires and vent pipes, I think that this timber fill will work with some netting, sure, and get us where we want to be. And then where we're using the timber bat is for sound on where there's an elevator up against a unit or a manager's office where there's mechanicals, then I've used this product actually or timber bat for sound because I have experienced that same issue where we have an ERV where there's a constant hum of a motor and people render them unusable, unlivable because it's just annoying. And this product so far has been a charm because of the sound deadening of the insulation, and we did it on purpose. Like it wasn't. We didn't think of it during design, but while we were installing it, I said, "Wait, wait, wait! There's an ERV by a manager's office and abuts to a resident's bedroom. Stop what we're doing. Put the webbing up while we're doing this room. Put the timber fill in now while we have the chance." And I haven't heard a peep. And trust me,
Yeah.
we hear peeping and squeaking if it's a problem. So that's what
Yeah.
this is all
I think,
about.
yeah, the density of
Um,
it, like it's heavier and heavier things block certain sound frequencies. And so that,
correct.
it has that weight that other products can't carry.
That's right. And that's the challenge. We've tested Roxel in the past where I thought it was a slam dunk. Roxel up the walls, in the ceiling, and still had little to reduce the sound. And I was surprised. Fiberglass, of course, as you said, Jesse, poor. There's just, it's almost as if there's nothing in there. And the timber so far has tested the dollars now it's a push. So we committed to Scott and team. If it's a push, we're all in. And so that's where we're at for right now. Now we need a solution for floor to floor because
Yeah.
in in our we build wood structures and there is no ICC real good ratings. Everything is with, concrete. So sure we could do, we do the whatever the genie clips or we do the sound clips and we do now we're trying Huber has the Exacore, but that's from China. God knows if we're gonna be able to get that. I don't know. But so that's our
Yeah, and
next.
Todd, you've got a good point, which is like the floor to floor sound insulation. We also in multifamily world, we're trying to always reduce the quantity of open cavities to reduce our sprinkler cost. And so you're
Yeah,
often filling cavities with insulation just so you don't have to sprinkler them. And it keeps
yeah,
your overall construction costs down where you might only need 3 inches for sound, but you want an 11-inch or 14-inch product to fill it so that the sprinkler companies don't have to put heads in every joist bag. And those
yeah,
kind of cost trade-offs are these peculiar things inside multifamily world where you're dealing with intense fire protection needs and inspection needs and
yeah.
sound needs,
Right,
all kind of like swirling around. And every practitioner in the room, the architects, contractors,
right,
developers know or deal with these in every meeting. So it's
right.
products that help with that are very effective.
And if I can
And
just weigh in on the follow up at some point, you'll get an email from us. We'll have links to the acoustical testing and data and 1 hour,
right,
2 hour wall. The one thing I just want to put a little asterisk on because we still have to do it. We have it
yeah,
for the demising walls. We still need to, and I think there's a tremendous opportunity, Jesse and Todd, is
yeah,
for that floor assembly. We still yet
yeah,
need to do some sound testing on that
yeah.
because we see that as a home run. I mean, you can do it in some instances, but I don't have the test and verification on that. So
Fair.
that's another
Yeah,
to-do list. But from a
yeah.
demising wall standpoint, we're good to go. We have the data for you.
Right,
And Scott, that's
right,
complex. Like what we see is huge difference in when I talk to people all over the country. New England uses a lot of long span trusses, these big, like 18-inch to 24-inch long span trusses. Other parts of the country are using I-joist framing, where they're only in
right.
the like 11 to maybe 14-inch. And so there's very different depths. And if you're trying to reduce sprinkler heads, you're like, these are big, thick products. So it's a complex. I can see why complex. Testing
And
floors
expensive.
there's a lot more variance in floors. They're very different, where walls are kind of similar.
And
Yeah.
it's funny, it's totally counterintuitive because you think if you make a tweak on an assembly here, you're going to have an enhancement. But with sound, oftentimes it's the reverse of that. You're like, son of a gun. And to do these assemblies, to be able to have the documents for you, it's very expensive to do it. And oftentimes
Mhm,
you test it and
Yeah.
don't get the results you want. So you got to get after it
mhm,
again.
mhm.
So yeah, having worked at Huber on that Exacore piece, that floor is a huge opportunity, and we're going to definitely put the time in and get the testing on some assemblies. But Todd, you said it. You've got your traditional gypcrete, and then you have
Yeah.
alternatives. Then you have just standalone OSB. So there's a lot of other. We have to, as a manufacturer, acknowledge that, and so there's only so many dollars to test so many assemblies. But we would, Jesse, look at our backyard first and foremost with the with what's being used here in New England and New York first and
Mhm.
foremost, and then head off into the other geographies as well.
Yeah, it's a unique
Yeah.
situation. Like we literally don't have gypcrete installers in Maine. They drive in from other states, and so there's very
Yeah.
low gypcrete use in our state. People
Right.
like certain techniques. You get into other places and like, oh yeah, no, we do that in every building. Of course we do that, and there's huge
Yeah.
variance in how buildings are put together all over the
Yeah, I
country.
mean Boston, that's all you see. To your
I
point,
know.
Yep.
110 miles away, and then up here you have some of these other options, but then you have the fact that now they're halfway around the world to procure it, the
Mhm.
material.
Hey, Jesse and Scott, sorry, I just interject here real quick. Lawrence had a question in the
Mhm.
chat. He just wanted you to revisit the subject you were mentioning around sprinklers and cost savings and how that insulation
Okay.
can impact that.
Got it. So in a multifamily building, you have a quite often in these 3 to 4 story buildings, there's a 1 hour fire protection between units above and below. So you have to have a 1 hour protection, but these are assuming it's a fully sprinklered building. And certain sprinkler rules, there are concealed cavities that have to be sprinklered in some sprinkler systems and don't. And so there's the NFPA 13, NFPA 13R sprinkler systems, which like an only residential building under a certain scale can have a 13R, which doesn't sprinkler some concealed spaces, hidden spaces that fires can start in. Like maybe an electrical box goes bad or a light goes bad and it starts a fire inside your ceiling, hidden. Um, an NFPA 13 system is sprinkling lots of concealed spaces. If you fill the cavity with insulation, it's no longer a hidden, open, concealed space. So it doesn't have to be sprinklered. And you sit in meetings where you are lowering your cost of your sprinklers by over insulating floor cavities. It's a funny thing where the NFPA rules have like, I think it may used to be 5 inches, now it's down to 2 or 3. There's
Right.
this sort of, you can have this area in your floor that is, if it's no bigger than that, we will not force you to sprinkler the hidden part inside the floor. Like there's a sprinkler head buried inside a floor, which nobody wants. Like you can't really get to it to fix it. So we're always trying to reduce this hidden sprinkler head cost. And sometimes you are adding extra insulation to floors to do that. That's like, does that explain it clearly?
It's cavities, all kinds of cavities in closets and just voids anywhere. Then we end up using insulation just to close those gaps up because it's the cheapest way to close the gaps, and not have to sprinkle.
And it's complicated because I think what Scott was hinting at is that when you put an insulation product that totally fills a cavity, it's touching both surfaces. Well, then sound can start to transmit again. Like you actually want like little gaps. You want
Right,
gaps
I
where the
got you.
thing isn't
So
touching
true.
both sides, but it has
Yeah,
to be not a big enough gap that you're forced to sprinkler it. And there are these kind of intricate
sure.
dances that certain products work well for and certain don't. And so like right now, I think Scott, yeah, TimberHP doesn't make a 12-inch thick bat. You couldn't even use it. So, you're using a different product. You're using a fiberglass bat or something, but in those areas.
So actually, let's see. So first of
So
all,
Alex,
are there any other
did that
are
get to
there
what you
any
think?
other slides that are,
I think you might have one more, Todd.
let's see.
Or these might be TimberHP slides. Yeah.
Well, I want to, and Scott, don't forget, I want to hear more about the exterior because, you know,
Yeah.
exterior, one of the things that so if you go back one slide, I just want to just talk to you for 1 second.
Hold
So
on.
yeah, go back one slide if you can.
Yep.
On the building that you didn't see the whole building, but if you
Yeah.
can.
Hold on. Yeah. There we go. It's coming.
All
You
right,
want more?
so if you could see that says R 3.8 per inch, that's the timber, and then it equals 20.9 plus 9. The 9 is the Zip R9 insulation on the outside. So that's, we did, by the way, normally we do Zip R12, so it's, 12 in, 12, Zip R12 on the exterior. What's that, 2.5 inches of insulation on the exterior, plus whatever I get on the interior. So I'm like in the R30 something, which is a great wall, but there's always a cost cap, save a nickel here and there. And I said, okay, we're close enough. And after we built the building, I didn't do the model. I had someone model the building, and we did a pretty good house. But someone said to me, "Hey, I did a woofy model. That's a fierce woofy modeling." And I said, if you just did this and this, if you'd have gone to Zip R12 and another tweak, this would have been a passive house. Like you were that close with the exterior. So the modeling really makes a difference. So that exterior. So like sometimes don't cut the nickels. So I'm very interested in the exterior insulation because it does make a difference. And I have heard, by the way, sheathing and then insulation inside against your studs is kind of wonky. You're better off insulating furthest out, then your sheathing, then studs. Talk to me about your product, Scott, that's coming out, your outboard insulation.
Yeah, I have a job that I have mocked up that I'll show you a case study on,
All right.
and it'll speak to that. Let's go. Let's do this one first. This is one, and you're going to be in this neighborhood soon, Todd, aren't you?
Yeah,
This
that's the next
Maple Grove.
building.
Yeah,
Yeah, we're building our next building. It's at the concrete stage. We're going to be doing trusses. Sorry, I mean, we're going to be doing panels next, and yeah, we're going to be doing timber fill in the exterior walls here.
and this is one that's kind of being completed right now by Hebert. This
Yeah,
was one of those ones where we were able to get a change order and plug in some timber fill. This is the one I wanted to talk to you about, Todd, with the continuous insulation. This is a victim of timing of when to get the board. Icon Architects out of Boston, a great firm I've worked with for years. And this is in Salem, where they're really focusing on carbon. And
Mm.
we are we were originally it was XPS. And one little story on that is when people are modeling as we come online with board, I just want people to be mindful of it because it's wood fiber versus a foam petroleum-based product. You can do a little more in the science labs with your R value per inch. So it's always best that we work with you in the design development stage if possible, because our R value is a little less. And we're going to be modeling somewhere between 3.4 to 3.7 per inch. We'll get more clarity on that as we start to produce. So in this case, they had a 2-inch R10 product specified. Now, the good news, and you use the word, the analysis, the WUFI analysis, when Icon approached me and said, hey, like to see where you're at with this. Of course, at this time, this is 2 years ago, we weren't even producing anything, but where we came in at, we were R7, and their WUFI analysis in terms of what they needed, that R2-inch with the R7 still was within the confines of what they needed for an overall wall assembly for an R value. That's great because it doesn't fool around with your sheetrock return and any other things where if all of a sudden you're trying to do a change order at the 11th hour, and maybe in some instances we might need to go to a thicker board, there are potentially some idiosyncrasies there with the trades and such. So I just want to kind of throw that out there. But this product, we are going to get the timber fill in this. They've broken ground. They actually had to raise a
Yeah.
building and da 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 da. But we'll be involved with this project with blown-in insulation on the exterior walls. Um, what what we're doing is no different than anything else. I mean, whether it's a rock wall or a foam board, we're just now providing a wood fiber insulated product. There's no sound aspects to this whatsoever. It's purely thermal. And the installation methodologies is very much the same. So you're going to be putting that over an exterior sheathing, and we'll talk about that in a minute because I know there'll be a ton of questions. And we're going to utilize furring strips, and the furring strips anchor the board to the wall, but they also provide the mechanical fastening opportunity for the exterior cladding and things of that nature. We'll certainly be able to provide, as we get closer, more directions for the installers because we've got to really focus on the needs of the owner, the architect, in terms of what the product is providing. Does it hit budget? Procurement, is it available? But for me, what's really important for us as a manufacturer to be very aware of is the fact that for most people in the United States, the installers, they've never utilized wood fiber. They've installed a bunch of continuous insulation. So we'll make
Yeah.
sure that we're on the mark in terms of fasteners. Okay, can I put it right on top of a zip sheathing with their weather barrier on it? Do I need a rain screen? So we're going to go through that communication, and there's different opinions. There's budget constraints to be concerned with, but just rest assured as we move forward and start to come on market, we know we need to provide architects, specifiers with that aspect in terms of the performance, but we will definitely be providing good direction, best practices for the installers to make their life simple as well too.
I'd
But
love
it
you to
is,
put me in touch.
Yeah,
Yeah.
one thing I'm very interested in, and I've had this is like when wood fiber comes in, one of the things that it has the chance of very changing things, but this is going to be a big code question, is
Fire.
that if you've got a vapor open assembly, all of the laws we've been working under about thickness of exterior insulation kind of
Yeah.
turn on their head. And so when you have a foam board, you're wrapping a building in a plastic bag. And so therefore you have to keep the wood warm to lower its condensation risk. So we have these big charts about minimum thickness of insulation in cold climate. It's like 2 to 3 to 4 inches of foam is really the safest approach to keep the wood framing warm because no moisture moves between it.
right. You
Well,
designed the building to dry it to the interior.
because you don't have any choice because of the products. And so
Yeah.
what I watch happen is people try to take those same assemblies and throw wood fiberboard, and all of a sudden they end up this very heavy, and then but with a vapor open assembly, if code
Yeah.
allowed you, you could put an inch and a half on it, get a good thermal break, and do a 2x8 wall. Every
It,
multifamily we do is panelized with a crane. No one's
Yeah.
picking up the wall panels. And so a
Doesn't
2x8 stud wall with a batt insulation and an inch and a half of wood fiber would be a pretty affordable assembly compared to 2 inches of foam with the
Yeah.
exterior sheathing.
Yeah.
But code doesn't allow this yet. And what a code consultant said to me is, the way things change in code is that a company pays to have it changed. They buy enough testing, they prove that there's a market demand in that. And the foam industry successfully did that with exterior insulation. They were
Yeah.
allowed a code path for it. And the
Yeah,
wood fiber
especially
industry doesn't have that
NFPA
weight.
too.
It doesn't have the
NFPA
push.
285. Yeah.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
So I think there's an interesting piece where we can have much thinner foam assemblies, and foam's always been the expensive, hard to work with thing. No site installer likes cutting foam, throwing it away at all the windows. It's blowing around the job site. So, the idea that we could have vapor open assemblies that allow thin exterior insulation in cold climates is really enticing. And that maybe you go to 2x8 stud walls. And then you can keep your cost parity with better materials. These are better materials. The workers are happier using them. The planet's happier using them. They are better all around. What does everybody talk about? How much is it? Can we afford it? That's the only question. Everyone's worried about it. And so the way, in my mind, you do that is by not using too much of this expensive, rare board product on the outside. You're not doing 8 inches of wood fiber rigid board. Like, that's just ridiculous. You got like $3 screws trying to hold it onto the building every 16 inches. Like, we're never going there.
Yeah, yeah,
So
yeah.
that's what I'm interested in. And it's like, it's going to take changes in code.
Yeah, Jason Todd is our building science guru, and God bless him. He is actively involved with all the code compliances out of the box, out of the gate. Where does timber board fit in the U.S. in terms of the place for where we sit? He's not only dealing with that right now, and he's fully immersed in it. He's also embarking on the Canadian market. Not that that may matter to the folks on this
No.
call, but certainly they have a cold climate. So all of that work, Jesse, right now, first and foremost, is to get to benchmark code and then start to look at some different variables. In fact, there was a clever conversation I had with an architectural firm yesterday on the cobblestone streets of Portland with Bryburn. We had a little shop talk outside where they've actually on bat, instead of going to continuous insulation, are looking to do their traditional cavity insulation and then taking a modified timber bat on the inside up against the stud with the rock. So there's a lot of interesting creative ways to get to that R value piece. And what we're doing right now behind the scenes is making sure that we address code, provide best practices where we're providing a very durable wall that's going to last to Todd's 100-year structure. We're working on that, and we think there can be a lot of iterations. But as you know, code-wise, it's glacier speed to make those changes.
Yeah.
And we are not one of those deep-pocketed companies, as you all know.
No, you're
Yeah.
definitely not. And Scott, that's where, like, we also see it in renovation. So multifamily renovation. You've got some townhouse that was built in the 80s.
Yeah.
It's time to redo the shingles anyway. You want to increase the insulation. You are not going to strip all the drywall off the inside of this building, but if you were to, add insulation to the outside, the code says you're going to have to put 4 to 6 inches of foam on
Right.
top of that building.
Deep
It's both
retro.
heavy, it's incredibly expensive. You're
Yeah.
putting screws you're going to miss going through the screws. And so the idea that you could take a vapor open peel and stick, which are all over the market, put it on this old 1980s roof and put 2 inches of wood fiber down. It's vapor open, put a nice big vent cavity on top so it can dry out safely, and then put, asphalt shingles on a layer of plywood. Like, that's a reasonably affordable assembly where you're not dealing with these crazy screws and people can actually physically install it. And it's vapor open. You've improved the building. You've made it a much better building, but you aren't in this crazy cost escalation. So that's something we're looking forward to, is renovation situations where you can not tear out drywall on the inside of buildings, but not also introduce a vapor trap and rot a building out all of a sudden. You were trying to fix it and you rotted it out. That's the worst
We're
thing
talking
that
about
can happen.
multifamily. There's a great project in Boston, Hanno project, which was a deep retro where they did not want to disturb. In this case, it wasn't so much the plaster walls as you might find in a single. This was not having the occupants have to move, other than the day they rip out the window and put in the triple pane.
Yeah.
And that was a job. Unfortunately, we didn't have our manufacturing up and running, so they had to go to another product. But that was exactly the thought process. There was super efficiency in terms of upping that thermal, but not short circuiting the movement in terms of vapor per se. We've
And
also
this is a challenge all over the country, Scott, with much smaller buildings. Like HUD built in the 80s, 70s, 80s, hundreds and hundreds and thousands, millions of 1 to 2 story townhouses all over the US, DA built projects, and they're all coming up. Their mortgages are coming due. They all need to be renovated. They all need to be improved, but you can't afford to do these like big, huge foam beer cooler wraps on them. And it's the money's very, very tight, but you need to make them better. And I think
Yeah.
there's certain new products that can make them better that don't get us into these cost escalations we used to do if you're smart about how thick to do
Mhm.
them. And
So from a product performance standpoint, with the vapor openness to address those things that you mentioned, the cost containment is critical. And just to share with what we're trying to provide, just like with Timberfill and Timberbat, we can't be a boutique manufacturer. We want this to be mainstream. And so the product and the costs in and of itself, and then the channel that we pick to push it out to the market are critical. If we don't have a good channel and we don't have a good costing, it's not going to work. So we've worked hard with Timberbat, Timberfill, check the box. We know that it works. We can do some enhancements in terms of speed of installation with fill. We know there's some improvements there. Same with bat. We know there's some things that we can do to help it even be speedier in the install. So with the exterior timber board, we're going to be below the mineral wool exterior products, and we're going to be at parity with the foam boards. One little thing, the asterisks, mindful of the R
On
value. Be
Mhm.
mindful of that R value. You might have to go
yeah,
to the next size up, but
Yeah.
at that 4x8 cost analysis, we'll be right there. So we believe we can offer those unique vapor open options, as you mentioned, Jesse, but we can be right in there on that budget side. So that's our
And
goal. Yeah.
and Scott, we chatted a while ago about whether you have a relationship with a board manufacturer to actually, I mean, a sheet manufacturer to actually laminate them, or are they going to be separate boards to be
Well, we all
installed
have our
separately?
dreams, right? So yeah, I mean that's
Sure.
longer term. Uh,
Okay.
they do have a facility up in Easton, Maine, and
Yeah.
yeah, I mean there's some conversations about doing something
But
like
for
that.
now, it's a separate product
Yeah, right
install.
now when we launch, just for everybody on this call, because I'm sure there's a couple questions that Alex are going to ask me along these lines. So when we
Yeah.
launch, and we're really looking at November of
Right.
this year. We might have some
Yeah.
pre-certified stuff. I throw that out there to you for
Yeah.
those of you that are not worried about a labeled product yet. We might in late summer, early fall have some of that. But
Right.
the board's going to come on market in November. Really looking at primarily, five and zone 5 and 6 per se. We might not have all the initial products out. It'll be four
Yeah.
by eight square edge. Just want to be
Yeah.
very, very clear on that. We
Hmm.
will at some point be able to cut it down to 2x8. Now that sounds pedestrian when we're talking about the smaller depths, but when you start getting up above that 5.5 inch, it's wood. It's heavy.
Yeah. Heavy.
Um, so first and foremost, 4x8 square edge, but we definitely plan to be able to obviously cut it to 2x8 and then eventually put in the TNG. These things seem simple, benign to those that are not in manufacturing, but the equipment necessary and the costing to put those in place quite heavy. This will also be ASTM flame spread B straight away, but we also are working and have plans to dose it with borate so that we could perhaps get to the A to have parity through all products as well, which would help us for these, the 5 and 10 foot setbacks and, potentially NFPA 285. But out of the gates, plain Jane, ASTM 285, flame spread B, 4x8 square edge. So just, and you guys are, my contact information will be up on another slide as we close out. But this is just a job we did in Boston, cost sensitive, flipped it out from traditional cellulose. And this was for sound abatement. I want to show this so people know that we're doing this type of work today. That's a 1-story podium with 5-story wood frame construction for sound abatement, just to give you that. And when we promoted this program, I showed Todd's job up in gray, and we are doing this purely for promoting the session. Clarity. This was JSA Inc. out of Portsmouth, New Hampshire, was the architect of record on this Vesta project in gray. And I wanted to make sure I put a shout out to anybody from JSA out there and give some clarity on that partnership. And then I'll just, I did not expect to see this ugly mug up, but we will be sending a follow up with some of those links I mentioned, but I'll leave this slide up here as Todd and Jesse have their final words. But please feel free to reach out to me, email me, give me a call. I'll be glad to help give you clarity, or if there's a project you're working on, we'll make sure you get in good hands. But Todd and Jesse, any final thoughts or comments as we get to the bewitching hour?
Yeah, I mean, we are so thrilled that there is a local manufacturer of high quality products with jobs in our area. I mean, this is the big deal. The idea that it is also, sustainable, but revitalizing the forest economy. These are huge things. The local manufacturing of these products is just massive to us, and so that's why we're excited about it. And the fact that it's a good product is great on top of it all.
Well, thank you for those comments, and thank you for your time today, Jesse. Todd?
Well, Jesse is from building science and others. Jesse's been a mentor to me, even though I'm probably 10, 15 years older than him, but he's
Yeah, even racing past, Todd.
always been a person as a go-to in this area. So I would just say that I'm going to agree with what Jesse said. A clean product for residents and that I can buy from Maine is a no-brainer
Yeah,
to me and to Avesta. It's our mission to support local and to be able to install clean products that are good
yeah.
products, right? We're not taking a backseat to a bad product. We're using a better product from Maine. Uh, what better decision to make? So we thank
Yeah,
you.
installation's a tough job. Like that's a hard job. And so
Yeah,
making it easier on those installers is a really big deal.
No,
yeah,
I thank you guys. You guys have been great, and they do a lot of prep work ahead of this and coordination. So I can't thank you both enough. And hopefully, those of you that attended, picked up some new information on multifamily tips and tricks, and perhaps consideration of utilizing wood fiber in your future projects. We think that that's a huge area of opportunity for us as a manufacturer, and we're going to certainly make sure we promote ourselves in that fashion and get you the documentation that you need so that it can be incorporated into your project. So um, I will say thank you to everybody for your attendance. This has been recorded. This will be up probably in a week or so on YouTube for those that joined late or want to forward off to somebody that you wish was on the call. And please reach out, give me a call, shoot me an email. Thank you all so much for supporting us, Timber HP. We really do appreciate it. Have a great afternoon.